And that's what I would say. Even for the men, it's like be willing to be willing. Be willing to be willing, right? That even it doesn't say something about you if you're not competent in one area. We've not been taught. Nobody talks about this thing, right?
Mental stimulation, spiritual stimulation is very key to a great spiritual sexual experience, right? And even though this is going to be another topic during this season about conscious sexual experiences, I want to kind of also bring it here where if you look at other cultures, they really, when it comes to the sexual experience, they really concentrate on the two souls coming together. They concentrate on the two beings coming together because it goes way past an orgasm,
Oh yeah.
because it goes way past the, oh, who's gonna have an orgasm first, or I hope, let me fake it so he can get over it. They really concentrate on the pleasurable experience, because we can admit as women sometimes that we've had sexual experience where we didn't orgasm but it was still enjoyable
Right.
because of the experience. So and what I mean by the different cultures, when you look at
Kamasutra.
Kamasutra, which is an ancient Indian sexual experience or teaching. It's really a book or a text that was created. It goes a little bit more than just sexual positions. It's really the concept of love and a way of life and so
And
forth.
energy.
Energy. And you also have tantric sex, which is an ancient Hindu practice, and it also talks about slow meditative form of sex where the end goal is not orgasm but enjoying the sexual experiences and the sensations that you receive from the body.
Wow.
And yeah, it is a interesting, and you guys could look into it, or you
Definitely.
can
That's
just
interesting.
continue to tune into She Discovered Podcast season 4, and
Absolutely.
you gonna hear that topic. And the last one, which I came across not too long ago while doing research, in Africa there is a sexual experience called the, and I may be pronouncing it wrong, forgive me, Kanyaza. And Kanyaza is the sensual Rwandan tradition which guarantees explosive female orgasm. So the teaching is actually geared towards making sure females have orgasm and they understand how their
I need
body
to move to
works.
Africa.
And to understand how their body works, how to reach that, but most of all teaching the men that it's not only about them. Here are the
It's about
multiple
us too.
ways. Yes, here are the multiple ways that a woman should also experience orgasm, because and I don't want to generalize it only to Africa. I'm not as educated on that or knowledgeable on that, but when you're dealing with certain tribes in Africa that practice genital mutilation to women, you could already see that they're removing the concept. Sorry for the noise, we in Brooklyn, y'all. The concept of you are not here to receive pleasure from sex, you're here to procreate.
To
That's
serve.
your only job, to serve, right? In that sense. So the fact that you're seeing that this new practice, Rwandan practice, that is,
It's new.
I don't know if it's new. I think they've been doing it a long time, but I think it's becoming new to the
Popular.
masses,
Okay.
because while I was researching it, so many people were now being put on, because there's this man that has written books about it and talking about it, and now people are doing like mini documentaries about the experience, where there's this tribe and village of women that
They
experience
happy.
orgasms. They're
They're
happy,
happy.
Wow.
you
I
know.
wonder. I need to see the correlation between that and Kundalini sex,
Okay,
because it sounds very
similar.
connected.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting.
Like it's
This is
an
very
energetic
interesting.
connection.
I'm learning something new right now.
Yeah, so again, the different variety of sexual experiences. You have tantric,
Cultures.
You have Kamasutra, you have Kundalini, you have what we just mentioned, Kunyaza, which is spelled Kunyaza, Kunyaza or Kunyaza. While listening to another podcast talking about sexual experiences, they did admit that because men have this connection between, you know, their identity and sex, because it's like that's their way of saying now they're a man, right? So that's why their ego is so much attached to it, even though it's very vital with what Jerry said, where it's just like, but the same way we got to work on ourselves and become self-aware,
Absolutely.
that's the same
Yeah,
way a man has to get out of that egotistical mindset of like his sex is,
definitely.
you know, connected to his identity. But in the midst of that, there was a woman or a sexual therapist that was saying we have to understand that at the end of the day that man is also a human being and
Mhm.
Yes.
criticism is hard to take.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, because criticism is hard to take, there are ways that we can
Mm-hmm.
communicate to a man, right? And they were saying, like, in the bedroom, instead of saying, like, oh my gosh, you can't get it right, like, move over here, they said we should use our subtle, sensual
Yes.
voices and
Yes.
be like, oh, baby, or honey, can you do this right? It kind of
Talk
continues
soft to
to,
them.
it kind
Yeah,
of switches their mind to be like, oh, she's not angry, she's still in a sensual space, but she's kind of guiding me on what to do.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You
even
don't want to
though
embarrass them.
you
You
don't want to
know.
embarrass them, and
Right. And
even though if it's one second, even
mm-hmm.
though if it's not um 100% of men that will still be like, okay, I hear you, you're increasing the probability of him to now want to hear what you're communicating, right?
Right.
And let's say if it's outside of the act while you're doing it, if you guys have a good communication, you can go and be like, you know what, babe, I really like when you do this and do that. You
Right.
start with a compliment
Mm-hmm.
and then you come in to be like, but when you do this, I kind of rather if you would do that. Like, how about we
Mm-hmm.
try that?
Right.
You know, instead of coming where it feels like an attack to them, you know. But go ahead,
Absolutely.
Jerry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I equate that to I think it was Christine who mentioned, that sometimes those things would happen after an argument. Well, how turned on are you after an argument? You feel like you can just
Right.
go get at it, especially if
Mhm.
you've been criticized before. Now, for us, before an argument, you're not thinking, let me just get all comfortable with you, right? A
Yeah.
guy can argue with you right now and they can get at it.
And
But the
still go
same
at it.
effect happens with them if in the midst of it or after or whatever, you just come like with it with an attack. You might not even get them to stand up the next time because
Right.
that is
Yeah.
dominating their mind. So I
Mhm.
agree with you in terms of how you can, and that just in general, there are different ways in which men communicate. There are different ways in which women communicate, and I think it's very key, very
To learn your
important to
partner.
understand the best way to get through, and there is a way to get through the ego. Some people's egos are very big. Make it
Mhm.
about how you feel as opposed to what they're doing. Because as somebody mentioned, I think Shayna said, they may have had an amazing experience with somebody else,
Yeah.
and then they're coming to you thinking, I know what I'm doing, but you're different, right? So
Hmm.
advocating for yourself is not putting other people in the mix, not putting them in the mix, just knowing from me, nah,
Yeah.
I'm not really into that. I don't
I
really like how
feel.
that feels. I
Yeah.
like this over here, but this right here, I'm not
I
for
learned
it.
that. I actually learned that in therapy when we went to therapy. They talked about sexuality and stuff, and it was like this five day intensive marriage therapy session, and like there was a sexual therapist there, and she talked about that. Like just being able to just express yourself in a way where you're not hurting each other, or you're not offending each other. You're making sure that you're not attacking, use the word attack, right? Like attacking your partner when you're expressing, but even then, when we went to therapy, we didn't even apply it. Like you have to actually apply these
Hmm.
things,
Right.
So,
Right.
but I know I learned a lot. So I took whatever I learned from there, and I'm like, I know in the future what I want. I know what I'm looking for now. I need to be able to be like, this doesn't feel good, or this hurts, or I'm tired, or I like this, or I don't like that. Like It's so, so important. And to say I feel instead of like you're doing this wrong or
Yeah.
you're, it's more like this is how I feel. And then their job is to validate how you feel. Their
Right.
job is to be
Right.
like, oh, okay, well, you're saying you feel like this. Let's come up with a solution on how we can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But that
I
comes
think
with the person you pick too.
yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you
Absolutely.
decide to deal with people, you really do have to take your time with the next person or the future person who you decide to, encounter those things with. Because at the same time, if you're ready to speak life or speak gentle to someone or into someone, they have to be ready to receive it too.
Hmm.
Right.
They have
Absolutely.
to be mature enough to hear you,
Right.
because
Yes.
some people like the idea of, if you're a beautiful girl, if you're a strong woman, some people like what they like. And because they get that type of person that they physically or appearance wise like,
Mm,
they would rather just keep the person instead of figuring out how to be
That's
happy with
true.
the person.
That's
So
true.
I've seen people who, like, they stay with the person because he looks good or she looks good or they have money or they have, and then nobody's hearing each other.
Mm-hmm.
They
Hmm.
fighting, they talking to each other crazy, and it's like, but
toxic.
nobody's going nowhere. And it's like, I would rather wait for someone who I can speak to and they can speak back to me and we can hear each other, and then we can move on to the next part. That's why I think communication in the beginning is key, because I need to know what type of person you are. Talking to you is going to tell me what type of person you are. If
Mm-hmm.
you know how to listen, if you don't know how to, if I'm repeating myself 2, 3 times, you don't know how to listen. So clearly, when we get there, and I'm saying to the left, you going to the right. I know you don't
Definitely.
do communication well, and it's my fault for taking
That's
it
a
all
good
the way
point.
there.
That's a good point.
So it's like you talk to them, you get to know them, you hear them, you let them hear you, and then you make the decision to, explore that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity with them, but being aware of also the type of person you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing? I think
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
if there's a guy listening, I would say create this space so that a woman can feel
Yes.
comfortable
To
sharing.
talk to you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ask
Please,
her,
guys,
ask
please
her,
do
and
that.
say, listen, like ask with the understanding that you're not always gonna get a 10, but ask, how was this?
And
Like,
women need to also learn to
yeah,
use better words when
yeah,
Better
talking
Yes.
to
words.
a
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't like it. Like sometimes I
You
know
gotta be
that
Hmm.
more gentle.
I'm not the best with my communication when it starts. I'll be like,
Yeah.
the heck going on? And then I'm like, let's bring it back, take it
No.
back, take it back. Yeah.
Hmm.
You know what? You know what we call that? Fantasia. The singer has a song, and the song is literally called PTSD, post traumatic
Aha! I heard this
post
song.
post traumatic sex disorder.
Oh my
And
goodness.
when you first hear it, you're still thinking, oh, was it a traumatic experience? But the whole song is talking about how this guy was like, I'm gonna put it down, I'm gonna do whatever, and you get hype, and then it didn't live up to the hype, and you're like, oh, I got PTSD now because he
I,
just
I know.
you know what I mean? Where it's just
I
like,
gotta
oh my
listen to that
gosh,
one.
I think
that
because
was
men really don't understand either. We get frustrated when
yeah,
it
We
doesn't go
do.
well,
yeah,
and it's true though. It's
like,
true
you get, especially if that is, you're probably better off not doing anything
at all
whatsoever
than
than to
doing
go through
something.
that and walk away feeling like you have PTSD.
Mm.
So
so what were you just saying? All she wants is a what?
a good D.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about that, right? Good job. You you on my wavelength because that was the next thing I was gonna hit up, right? So I want us to talk about
What is
penis
good?
size, right?
Oh Lord.
Because
Important.
what we're taught as women, what men are taught to
The size
desire to
matter.
have, the size matter. And every time it's like, oh, we want mandingo, we want a big penis, we want it da 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 da. And at
Mm,
the end of the day, I'm sorry. I'm
mm.
sorry. Ain't nobody. And I saw another sex therapist that said, sir, my vagina canal is only 5 to 6 inches. So if you are 8 to 9, where you're in, like you're about to hit my stomach, you know what I mean?
That's
So
it.
so she was basically saying, and I've done other research where yes, we've been taught bigger the better. We want it huge. We want to like
No.
he got to be hung like a
Mm.
horse. And
No, I'm
then
good.
men feel like, oh, I got to live up to that. That men have, penis size insecurities, or men feel like they want to go and have penis surgery. Men want to take enhancers, all these things, because they feel like, oh, this is what women want. The bigger, the better, right? But here's the thing, though, with the anatomy, it is true. With the female vagina canal, it is only like, I think 4 to 6 or 4 to 5, right? And it doesn't take that
It
much.
passes through there though, but
Yeah, but in the
Yeah.
sense of like that pleasure zone, right? So with that said, it's like the fantasy of having so much length, that's what we need, and it has to be huge. There's no need for that.
Ellie, read
Now,
those
don't
porn.
get
I'm
me
telling you.
wrong. For the don't get me wrong, for the dudes that are, I'm sorry. But if you're like, these are me, then yeah, I mean, we
Find your little
need
help.
something to kind
I
of deal with,
disagree.
right?
I
But here's
disagree.
what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna come back to you,
I
Eunice.
mean,
But
there's foreplay and all
here's
that stuff too.
right.
So.
exactly.
But here's what I'm gonna say is
Some
that
people have that and they still can't work with it.
right. But this is what I'm gonna say though. So you can have a big penis but not know what to do with it,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Because
Absolutely.
you think it's just in and out, pound this, whatever. But again, you're not paying attention to body language. What is her body saying to you? Are you listening not only to her body but her words? You know what I mean? And
Definitely.
understanding that even sex is an art. So there's an art to
Oh
it.
yes,
So
girl.
it's like this concept of like, oh, so I'm big and I'm great. And it's just like,
Mm.
no,
Ego.
because
That's that ego.
you may have a dude that is maybe what they call smaller because there's average, there's big, and there's small, right? The same thing with height. You have an average height dude, tall dude, short dude. So let's say
Yeah.
the penis side
I
is
certainly
shorter, but you have men with shorter size penises, and girls are like, he rocked my world. You know what I mean? Because in the sense of like what Christine was saying, his level of foreplay was crazy. You know
yes.
what I mean?
Definitely.
And and penis
That's important.
sizes penis size is the same way that a woman's canal is 4 to 6 inches as average. They say the same thing for a man. In average in erection should be about 5 to 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're going to 8 and up, that is a guy that, and
Man,
it's
big
not
girl.
of the norm, but he is very packed, right? So in that sense, let's say the guy is on the lower end, like he's on maybe only 5 inches when he's erect. That doesn't mean he still can't pleasure you. You know what I'm saying? But
Definitely.
that's something that I feel like is a detriment even to us as women in enjoying sexual experiences, because we've been told, and in hip hop songs and in songs bigger, better, or reggae songs, or all these
Yeah,
things,
we've
is
been
like, well, if
brainwashed, girl.
he ain't big, then he ain't gonna put it down. Then you're already limiting your experience, because you're just like, well, he's not big, so I
Definitely.
don't want to deal with him. You know what I mean? And it's like you're already messing up the sex. You don't even know what he was gonna do, how
And
he
you
was
don't
gonna
know
do
what
it,
you don't know.
and you
You
don't know
don't
what you
know.
don't know. But your niece was gonna say something where I said this, and
I was,
she was like, she
you,
disagreed.
what, it was a movie. I forgot what it was. And the father was telling the son, it ain't the size that matter. It's the motion of the ocean. And it's
Mm.
like, it's kind of true. Cause it's like,
Yeah.
I have,
And
had an experience, a past relationship where he wasn't as big as most,
Mm-hmm.
but I was never dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't he wasn't heavy on the foreplay, but he didn't neglect it either. But
Yeah.
yeah.
it was just the experience he brought, and then we were very much into each other,
Mm-hmm.
and we very much had experiences with each other. We had good times with each other. So when we did engage, it was just like it was good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when after that, when I
It's the
started hearing things like,
communication.
oh, size, if it ain't thing, and I'm just like, well, it didn't bother me that he
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it was pretty good. And
Yeah.
we've had big words like, no, that's too big, this too much. Like, don't nobody want to be
Yeah.
dumb,
Duh.
long body. I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
hopping back every 5 seconds. Like, you sitting like, Uncle, stop that. You're not enjoying that
Right.
neither.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not
and
enjoying it
and
either.
I've heard, because ladies, I've been doing a lot of research for this stuff, and I've heard that men that are that, like not only
It's
long, but
uncomfortable.
they're
Big and
thick
thick.
also, that they don't even
They can't.
enter all the way because
They
they
They can't.
can't.
They
They
can't.
can't.
Girl, where they gonna put it?
control.
They can't.
Where are they gonna
Yeah.
put it? They
Too
can't
painful.
even go. It's too painful, so they can't even. And they only you and yes, the man the same way for us. We have different spots, right? You hear of the G spot, the A spot, and different stuff like that. So men have different nerve endings on their penis as well. But the same way
Hmm.
we say the clitoris is the main area, the tip of the guy's penis is also their main area. Not saying
If
that
it's
Yeah.
there
going
aren't.
in,
You're right.
Yeah.
So if it's going, they're still receiving pleasure. There's no need to go all the way like the sex therapist. You don't gotta go into my like
my
my
stomach.
stomach. You know what I mean?
Nah.
But with what Yanis was saying though, although let's admit it, we wouldn't want a pinky sized man,
No, man.
but
No.
there are men out there that are that, and on a more serious tone, how do they now feel like, dang, how am I supposed to pleasure this woman? What am I supposed to do? Because I read articles that men felt very ashamed, and I started to realize that the same way that women have different vaginas, we have different sizes, different shapes of vaginas, the same way for men, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
there's skinny, there's long, there's
Up there
short,
straight.
there's everything, you
All
know what I
sorts
mean?
of. Yeah.
So although yes, we have preferences and it's okay to have preferences, we do have to start being a little bit mature in our thinking of like,
Definitely.
how can we, like what Yanis was saying, even though this is not the ideal or the ideal in society, how can we turn this into an enjoyable experience for both of us, right? How do we continue to explore, and how do we continue to advocate for our sexual desires and needs as women? And one of the elements I was going to say is that we should continue to educate ourselves. I think
Definitely.
that's a part of being aware is education, right? With
Yeah, I
everything
learned a
that,
lot today, just now. I'm like,
right.
Okay.
wow.
80% of what we learn is by doing. I'm just gonna leave that right there.
Yeah,
I'll
practical.
come back to that, but yeah.
And
Hmm.
confidence, having confidence within yourself, because sometimes I think we think too, we like this person so much. If we
Mm-hmm.
say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, they might leave. You need to understand and be confident within yourself that if you tell somebody that you don't like something or this is just not something that
Come
you
on
want
now.
to indulge in, and they don't receive it well, and they decide to
And
leave,
they're
that
not for
wasn't for you.
you.
That wasn't
That's
for
it.
you. That was just something that you had to experience, because the person that actually wants you, that actually wants to experience you in your entirety, your mind, your body, your soul, is going to want to hear what you
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm,
to say. They're going to want to
absolutely.
enjoying you.
A
My
majority of what we experience sometimes, it may not be something necessarily wrong with the person or not you, but it may be a belief system that you need to address so that
Mm,
you can embody the entirety of who you are. All right. Address you saw how I made the connection between the experience I had at 5, 7 years old and how that transferred all the way into my adult life. Right.
yeah.
Sometimes it's necessary to go back and remove those things. What were you taught about sex from church, from home, from
right,
culture? What were the things that you were taught that is getting in the way of you really being comfortable in your sexuality? What served me and what does not serve me? What conversations have you had with people? There's sometimes the very same people who are outlining a way of doing things, find out how they're living in the bedroom. You find out it's not working for them, and you might have to create a new way of being for yourself that
Hmm.
you may have never seen or heard of before, and you have to be willing to step into that. um,
right,
and with that, I'm going to give an analogy. I
Hmm.
always say this: two people can engage in the very same act, and one person does so from a place of destruction and another person does so from a place of alignment.
I love that you bring that up. Yep.
Oh,
Two
Hmm.
people can
yeah.
drink alcohol. One person is doing so to numb the pain that they're experiencing. Another person
Yeah.
is really in an aligned place and they're having fun and they just had a glass. Two different
Yeah.
experiences. Two people can have sex. One person is doing so to feel a void of loneliness. The other person is happy, enjoying
Mm,
themselves, and they want to
yes.
express themselves spiritually with another person, two different experiences. So
Yeah.
it's about being self-aware, knowing where you're at when you're engaging in those actions.
I love that
That,
you brought
that's
that up, because that
wow.
was gonna be my point, in the sense of like, how can we continue to explore and be advocates? And I said education, because again, I feel like there's a lot of unlearning and
Oh
relearning that
yeah.
we have to do. So in the midst of doing all these research, there was a lot of unlearning and relearning I had to do, especially when it came to penis size or understanding
Right.
my own anatomy as a woman,
Yeah.
But I love when you said that, because I said we have to understand what is our motive for our sexual
Yeah.
experiences, right? Is
Um,
it from a
Mm.
place of insecurity? Is it from a place of I'm in a vulnerable place, but not in a vulnerability like I just want to share myself, but vulnerable meaning the let's say the vulnerability and what we've been taught to see vulnerability as,
Hmm.
in the weakness
Yeah.
sense, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, I
That's
feel weak right now, I just feel lonely. What
mm,
is the motive, and is it even coming from
wow.
a lustful place? And when I use the word lustful, what I mean by that is like what we said, we're not even thinking about who we're interacting with sexually. It's more of like, I just want to pounce, I just want to I just want my
Yeah.
orgasm. And don't get me wrong, we've had like passionate or animalistic, like, oh, I just can't wait to,
Yeah.
but there's
Definitely.
a difference when I feel people just have this. I've seen men, and I'm not getting at men, but I'm going from experience where that's their lens. It's like, I just want to hit it, I just want to have sex. It's like
Yeah.
they don't even care about the person, all they see is
Immature.
the body that they want to
Yeah.
enter. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't even think that's a healthy place to
Right.
come to when entering into sexual experiences. And I'm so happy that more men of status um are now coming on social media and saying, I used to think that way, and as I'm growing as a man, what
I'm
do I
changing.
look like being
Yeah.
happy that, oh, I slept with 100 women? I did,
hmm.
like, as boasting, as if, like, you know what
I'm
I mean?
cute.
Because now seeing that you are no longer married and you've had this awakening and understanding, how do you view yourself now moving forward into your next relationship?
I feel like I'm still learning.
Mm,
Even the art of relaxing, and I think that comes with even before you have sex with the person. Like,
mm-hmm,
do I feel relaxed around you in
mm-hmm.
general, and if I don't feel relaxed around you, then I know that we're not even going to be able to take that next step.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm still kind of exploring, and even right now, I'm learning things today that I'm like, I gotta go study all these different like cultures and things, because you can kind of learn from different cultures and stuff, and bring those things into the bedroom too sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And but I don't have anything set in stone. Like, I'm very protective of my sexuality right now because it's a part of my healing journey. Like, I know that I was very promiscuous as a child, and like, in my marriage, I was lying, I was faking it. The connection wasn't there. People say, "Oh, well, you have 5 kids with him. How did you?" And that's another thing I want to mention.
I wanted to mention that.
People
Yeah.
people assume that because you have so many kids with this person, that means your sex life was like off the chain. And a lot of guys that
Mm.
approach me, like, I was at the lake one time reading my Bible, and some guy came up to me and he's like, "Oh, you have 5 kids?" Like, 'cause I was kind of sharing with him, and then he's like, "We know what you like to do." And I'm like, I kind of felt disrespected in a way, because I'm like, you don't even know my story. Like, you don't know
Mm.
why I have 5 kids. I could have been raped. I could have been whatever. Like, you don't know. You don't know if I was really enjoying that, into those intimate moments with my ex. Like, we didn't plan any of our children. They just came about. And it's like, not that we had to or anything, but that says a lot about our sexual experience as well. And I'm at a place where I'm like, you got to come at me correct. Like, I have to know that you're sexually mature to be able to even take that step with me. And
Mhm.
I have the discernment now to be able to understand if he's the one or not. And a lot of these guys out here, I went on dating apps and everything, and most of them are just thinking about friends with benefits,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Piggyback a little on something that Jerry mentioned. And again, yes, we have different belief system perspectives, but I do want to bring this out for it to be another notion, for us to understand, because we've been told that a lot well, we've been told, wait till you're married, right? And it could go all the way left, where it's like, wait till you're married and you have no type of understanding, awareness, education, and everything. The learning process happens once you get into the bed or once you get into the
Mhm.
marriage. I don't agree with that either, because
Me
I see too
neither.
many people suffering
Mm-mm.
from that,
Me
right?
neither.
But
Yeah.
I've you also hear the other side where it could go all the way left, and I don't want to call it all the way left because it's really just this one notion where it's like test drive before, because you want to make sure that
Mhm.
it's good, you want to make sure, or that you want to get the experience, and I get that. But I also have this belief system, and it's not only because of the waiting for marriage. I see it on a deeper or another level, where outside of that, I feel like with everything that we said here today, if we are really doing the work before, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like personally, I may not have to test drive it before, because we've done so much preparation in communication, like you
Mm.
said, and
Yes.
in being relaxed, like you said, setting the atmosphere. And what your niece was saying too, that I'm observing who you are. What Jerry said, I'm observing who you are. That to the point that I can tell that when we do get into the bedroom, that you're gonna listen to me. It's going to be
Mm.
it's going to be an
Come on.
explorative experience for both of us. And that I've seen that you are in a mature man, that you're not going to let your ego take into play, right? And maybe, let's say, you don't know how to do this way, but ooh, let's learn together, you know what I mean? And the same thing for a woman, take that time to even learn yourself. And I want to read something real quick. There's a woman who is a gynecologist, but also a pelvic doctor for women. And
Mhm.
she shared this, where she also came from a religious background and she still sees herself as Christian. But she said, too many times we let these Christian values overthrow understanding our sexuality as women, right? So
Mm-hmm.
she wrote this and she said, I wish someone would have told me when I was younger that I can fully exude my sexuality without actually having sex. I wish I learned that the physical expression of my sexual feelings are not the pinnacle of my sexual feelings. This way of looking at sexuality can be damaging. Example, waiting for Prince Charming to finally come along and quench all my longings for sexuality and pleasure, or even that having sex with another person is the only way you can really express yourself sexually. The mindset crucifies sexuality on a broken tree of act. Instead of acknowledging
Mm.
it as a way of being, and while I do believe the
Wow.
standard of Christian values, and I was taught about sex, and I do believe in the sanctity of it and being committed to the person, but I also do believe in teaching that, no, she says, I do believe that teaching it only from that angle can lead people to feel like, one, they're missing out on something for
Mm-hmm.
likely an indefinite period of time, or two,
Yeah.
can only experience their sexuality when a penis is in their vagina, and that it's not
Oh
true.
man.
And then
Mm.
three, must live in denial of any sexual
Yes.
feelings of
That
denier and desires.
that right there.
And the last one is to torture themselves with tips to suppress their sexuality, as if, like, just go take a shower or just go work out or
Yeah.
take it out your head because it's sinful to think about this
Mm-mm.
sexual experience. And she says these things are actually detrimental.
It's
So I
detrimental.
want
Mm.
to say that you can express your sexuality, you can explore your sexuality without um entering into the act of actually having sex to feel that you are experienced. But you also
Wow.
have to understand that it's important to explore your sexuality, and there's multiple ways of doing that. And she goes on and on of how those are ways that you can do
Wow.
that. So I just wanted to have that element, that I get the whole, I need to put into application what I've learned. I get that. But I also want to make sure that that's not the only narrative and scenario that's being put, where it's like,
Yeah.
you got to test drive the car, you got to test drive the car, when it's just like women feel,
Mm-mm.
or men feel, unless I do that, then I'm not experienced, or I'm not knowledgeable, or I'm not aware, when you could still do it and still not be knowledgeable
Hmm.
or aware, you
Right.
know?
And
Definitely.
that
So,
term test drive, I get where
Wow.
you're coming
yeah,
from, but
yeah.
that term
Yeah.
test drive in my mind leaves a different connotation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
live a life of intention. Like, know that, take sex out of the equation just for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Walk and live your life knowing that. Like I tell, I don't, the word devil never comes to my mind because I live a life of intention. I know anybody who comes into my experience, you are good. You came into my life for a reason. We coincided so that either you could be a teacher, mirror back
Definitely.
something to me about myself, or vice versa. When you're living a life of intention, every encounter that you come into is spiritual, right?
Yes.
And you're not
Absolutely.
test driving, you are living life, and life is bringing teachers to you. life
Lessons.
is Life would be bringing people to your life that you get to teach for a moment, and it's
Mm.
always upward movement. It's never a situation where you, man, what the heck was I thinking? No, because you're living a life. So I like what you said.
Are there any last thoughts that
I mean,
we have? One thing, women, let's stop faking orgasms. Let's
Please,
Yes.
let's stop
please.
I
let's stop
agree.
faking
Definitely.
orgasms. But yeah.
So necessary for me. It's a part of my healing. Like this was so necessary for me to even join on onto, because I'm like, I'm over here thinking, like I'm a deep thinker. So I'm gonna be over here like doing some research as soon as I get off of this. Like, Lord, thank you. Thank you for this. I
You're
appreciate it. You
welcome.
guys, you all of you ladies had some great wisdom and good insight. So
No,
I appreciate it.
we appreciate your vulnerability and
Yes,
your story.
yes.
We really thank you for that one as well.
Mhm.
You ladies have anything to share?
I
Yeah.
just want to say, just be confident in yourself. First, learn yourself as a
Mm-hmm.
person. Besides sex, besides pleasing a man or pleasing a woman, whatever your desire is, learn yourself as an individual.
Mhm.
Become aware of yourself, of your likes, your dislikes, your interests,
Yeah,
your non
yeah.
Mhm.
interests, and then indulge in someone else, because if you can't please you, nobody can please you either.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you learn yourself, you get in tune with yourself, then you go out there, be be ready for whatever, someone else or something has for you, but also be confident in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
what's your likes, what's your dislikes, don't be afraid. If that person
Mm-hmm.
leaves, they're not for you.
That
Mhm.
If you
part.
don't want to, you don't have to.
Mhm.
Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness, sexual
Definitely.
awareness is everything you. Just like
Yes.
sexual
Mm.
awareness for them is everything them. Sexual awareness for
Yes.
you is everything you. Whatever you into, whatever you're not into, vocalize it
Be
and
honest. Yeah.
be honest with yourself, then be honest with the other person and see where it goes.
Be honest with you and be honest with the other person. I like that. Jerry?
Well, I said a lot. I would say, learn to communicate
Mm,
outside of sex. Just
yes.
learn to talk, have
Oh,
conversations,
yeah.
have the hard conversation. The things that are the hardest to talk about, try talking about it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, because I found, and I told you guys at the beginning that I have had a lot of conversations with, to get to this side where I can speak as openly as I'm doing, is because I've had enough conversations with people who are doing it the other way, where I was taught I was
Yeah.
supposed to do it, and I see it didn't work for them. So now I'm speaking up because I know there's a lot of talk
Wisdom.
on the other side about this is how it's supposed to be, and behind closed doors it not working, right? So have, especially people who live in Christian environments, learn to have conversations and learn to. I cannot tell you, but I will suggest that you address those belief systems that has been handed down to you, and
Mm.
see what has really just been somebody telling you their way of being that's not working versus
Absolutely.
what is true for you. because what is true for you might not look like the next person. And when you get to the place where you can be aligned in your thought process, then you welcome the experiences that come into your life to help you to grow.
Mm,
Amen, sister. Okay.
nice.
Well, again, I appreciate each and every one of you ladies for being on She Discovered podcast. This was packed. I know we could have went on and on because there's multiple other
Mhm.
directions we could have went into, right? But for what we've
Definitely.
said here today, I think we've brought up a lot of things that we can always have my listeners or my viewers learn and expand from, because that's the goal of this podcast. So again, I am your host, Shay Sana, and we've had Yanis on, we've had Jerry on, we've had Christine on, and most definitely, please go check out the episodes that they were on. Everything will be in the description in the link. And I want to leave you with two more gems. Because Christine, you're talking about you want to learn some more, and I'm pretty sure my
Yes.
viewers would love to learn some more. Two
Yeah.
books that I read and I came across that I believe will be of benefit to people. One is called The Queen V, the letter V, and it's talking about everything vagina, everything female
Okay.
sexuality, and it really breaks down how we need to become more self-aware as women, right?
Nice.
And it talks about a lot of stuff. I listened to it on Audible as an audio book, but it's
Yeah.
really really good. And the second book I want to recommend is called The Great Sex Rescue. The
Hmm.
Great Sex Rescue. And that book is actually a it's like they call themselves the Christian sex book, but not the Christian sex book. I think that would be the tagline, right? Because they're actually wanting to dismantle some of the belief systems that has been passed down in Christianity when it comes to sex. And yes, we know we see it in other religious sectors, but they're only talking from their,
Yeah.
experience and belief system. And they're basically even sharing how certain books in the Christian realm that we were taught to read, how it even was even detrimental to us and not really helping us.
Right.
Understanding that it came from a sincere place, but it continued to dumb down our awareness. And they talk about Christian women faking orgasms. They talk about Christian women not being satisfied.
Wow.
They talk about all these things while still keeping their morals on, wanting to wait till marriage to have sex and be intentional
Yes.
about your partner. But they're really saying, we're here to rescue you, Christian women. and
Oh wow, that's
and
Thank
awesome.
i
goodness.
I was shocked because they were just like, look, we're about to break some things down while we're still sticking to our morals, but there's a lot of damage that has
I
been
like
done.
that.
And they did like a big experiment where they interviewed multiple women, and what they took that they saw was like the prominent things that kept coming up. It was like, this is what we need to address,
Hmm.
so
Wow.
again, the, those things will be in the link in the description box. So I again thank you ladies,
Wow.
and
Thank you.
everyone, please,
This was
like you
fun.
said, let's become more self-aware, not only for our sexual experiences but for our overall experiences as human beings. So listeners, viewers, tune in next time to She Discovered podcast. Bye.
Bye.